So, welcome to this year's ISSBA Presidential Debate. The following 5 candidates are your people for President and Vice President positions on the 2018-2019 ISSBA Council. So they are Sophia, David, Doyle, Sam. So today's debate will include 5 questions taken from a survey submitted to the high school student body, and due to time constraints, each question will be directed at only 3 of the candidates, and the order in which they answer in will be announced. After this first planned section of the debate, we will open the floor to questions from the audience, which will go on to the end of lunch, hopefully. So with that, we'll begin the debate. Candidates, when a question is asked, you will have 30 seconds to think before the first candidate must begin his or her answer, and you will have a maximum of 1 minute to give your answer. At 45 seconds, we'll hit the table once so that you can have a chance to wrap up appropriately. However, don't feel compelled to occupy the entire allocated time, as the best answers are not always necessarily the longest ones. Okay, so are we ready?
Yes.
Okay, let's begin. So the first question will be answered by Sophia, Rocio, and Sam in that order. What is one thing you can promise to do for the student body if elected, and how will you accomplish it?
So I think the only thing that I can promise for the position of president, or in the presidential pool for ISSBA, is to really be one with the ISM community and the student body, to really make sure they have a voice, as like that I'm just going to be like a stereo to amplify what they want to say. I want to make sure there's a big relationship with ISSBA and the student body, and I think we can do that more through communication, through simple surveys, like asking what they want to see, what they think, like understanding also the students, like what might be relevant, what might be applicable to present to them, and like just showing off how amazing our student body is, really.
Going off of what Sophia said, from my understanding, ISSBA's main job is to act as a communicative bridge between the student body and the administration. So, for example, tackling an issue with communication, this sort of manifests itself in perhaps the way that students follow the dress code. Maybe the way that admin could tackle modifying the dress code, for example, with students not wearing proper shorts or proper sweatshirts, could be through ISSBA, and ISSBA could perhaps have a social media platform where students could express their ideas and their thoughts, or even just opening up an email account where students can send in concerns and details that could be referred through ISSBA to the administration to effectively make informed decisions regarding things like the uniform.
So this year, being an ISSBA cabinet member, I've learned so much about the basics of being transparent, and as well moving on and doing different projects, like other than Bob and other than our assemblies. This year I was a freshman communicated with me her concerns about sweaters, for example, and I realized that this conversation should be brought up to admin. Although this year we weren't as successful since it was pretty a rush process, next year as a ISSBA cabinet member, or even as a ISSBA president member, I would do everything I can to open up a one-stop shop for for people who have concerns, a basic form that everybody can access at any time, anywhere, if they have any concerns that they would want ISSBA to bring up. For example, like the dress code, like Rocio said, or even such things like a canteen project, which David has been doing. All of these projects, all of these concerns can be done in one place.
So the second question will be answered by Doyle, David, and then Sophia in that order. Describe yourself in 3 words and justify why you decided to select those 3 words.
I think the three words that describe me will be funny, decisive, and change. Because the thing about me is that when I make a decision, I usually make a decision regarding the fact that I kind of go for a trial and error. I don't really go for the idea that everything should be perfect after a decision is made. I know we are all humans and we all make mistakes. And I think same can go for ISBA too. I mean, we can make mistakes and learn from it. But then I think those kind of approaches to many different changes we can have as ISBA is a lot better than just not doing anything, because it might cause some turmoil or dangerous situations.
I like to sum up these three words in a short little acronym. PI, P for passionate, I for inspired, and E for experienced. I think I'm passionate because I've been in this school for 12 years, and I've really seen its ups and downs, and I really feel connected with the whole student body, with you guys. And I for inspired to do my best, to give my all, and really just work into the nights, making sure that every activity is smooth. And experience because I've been class president for the past 2 years and ISBA vice president, so I kind of know what works and what doesn't to make everything better. Thank you.
Well, one of my words is also passionate, and same like David, I've been at ISM for 12 years as well, a long 12 years, but it's been like an amazing experience, and I love this school so much, and I'm passionate about so many things. My second would be social, because I love relating to people, connecting to people, forming new connections, new friendships. And my last one, big one guys, extraordinary, because I feel like I am extra and far from ordinary. Nice.
Okay, so the third question will be answered by Sam, Rocio, and David. What has been a challenge you faced in your life, and how did you overcome it?
2 years ago, I went away to Spain for spring break. Me and my uncle alone. We hiked for 100 kilometers in northern Spain, the Way of St. James, and towards the end of it, what do you call it? I was somewhat stubborn in a sense at first, like because I was a bit childish back then, but then my uncle, who was tired of my childish ways, eventually sort of left me behind on the last day. Like he didn't tell me where he went or whatnot, but I learned to be an independent person, one who takes the risk of doing things by himself, whether or not I would know the consequences, but I think it's the best way when you're independent to learn more.
When I was 6 years old, my brother hit me on the head with a hammer. And I might talk about this in my ISBA speech, but it basically taught me a bunch of different critical thinking and problem-solving skills. The most important thing that it taught me was communication, because instead of using my fists, even though it might feel good, I decided to use my words and instead explain to him that what he did really hurt me. And as a result, he apologized. And I think that this situation brought upon a lot of skills that still manifest themselves in me today.
I think a challenge I face is more recent, I guess. It's really just balancing my schedule in this high school, something that many of you can relate to. And over the years in high school, I really found that the true way to balance things is, one, to make sure that all your activities would relate. Like, I made sure that, for example, if I'm going towards something closer to engineering, I would keep activities like robotics, because it really helps not only with my classwork, but my classwork can also help with my activities. And the second thing is to prioritize. And I always would like to prioritize my council positions and really something that deals with the community above everything else. Because by prioritizing, you're really just putting all your energy into one thing so that you have enough time to make that thing the best. I think that thing is ISSBA for me. Thank you.
Okay, so the fourth question will be answered by Rocio, Sophia, and Doyle. If you could bring back one person from the dead, who would it be and why?
A person that I would want to bring back from the dead is a political figure. His name is Ninoy Aquino, and he was a martyr for the People Power Revolution in the Philippines. And I'd want to bring him back from the dead because he stood for a lot of things that I believe in. He stood for free democracy and for a lot of liberties that a lot of Filipinos were denied during the Marcos era. And I think that if I were able to speak to him, I would just tell him that I was honored to be even in his presence. And I think that as a revolutionary, he inspired a lot of people, including myself. So I think that his enduring legacy is what makes him so notable and so worthy of bringing back from the dead.
So, Michael Jackson is an amazing man. And more than just the fact that he was a talented performer, and, like the one thing about people who perform, like even though, singers and pop culture might seem a little bit like, oh, like that's like just entertainment, they inspire so many people and they reach out to so many people. And you'd be surprised like how many people are willing to risk their lives for him just because he's so talented and so inspiring, because they could relate on different levels. Like, he had a really terrible childhood. He didn't have a childhood. And I just feel like when you're able to like reach out to that big range of people and be so inspiring, you have so much power in you. But he never used it for anything necessarily bad. He just loved to perform, and you could see his passion, and when he was on stage he'd light up the entire room. And I think I really admire people like that.
To be honest, I don't think I will be bringing any people from the dead, because I believe that, thinking about people in the past is great when you're learning history and trying to learn from your mistakes. But then I think it's kind of useless to dwell on the past instead of like looking forward to the future and taking action right now to achieve your wanted goals in the future. And that is what I stand for.
Okay, so the final question will be answered by David, Sam, and Doyle. Reflecting on your experiences on ISSBA, what do you think were your biggest contributions this year? And what were some specific instances when you added to this year's successes?
As Vice President of ISSBA this year, in addition to helping lead the Bada of the Bearcats effort, as well as making sure assemblies run smoothly, I think one major thing I focused on was tackling issues that students had. And I found that one issue that really concerned many students was the length of lunch lines and how we can cut down on the amount of time spent waiting in lines. So I tenaciously brought this subject up during meetings. It's every monthly meeting to ensure that our voice was heard, as well as that we make proposals, for example, like a pre-order system or even staggered lunches. And while this process has been hard, but there is still progress, and I believe that with time and effort and your support, we can make this long-term goal a reality. Thank you.
Among the many things that I think that I've contributed to, which were successes, one, for example, was making Bob a bit more sustainable in a sense where we, instead from turning the in terms of giving packets out to the teachers, we became more sustainable and made it paperless system where teachers could use a Google form. And I thought that this is part of my goal for the school, that the school should become a bit more sustainable as the school currently is progressing. And I believe that if I was going to make my senior year a successful one, I would make it much more developed, much more progress, and leave a legacy for the school, that this school becomes more eco-friendly, much more spirited in a sense, and Bob as well becomes much more successful next year.
What I believe that I contributed to ISSBA is that we all know that ISM admins are very conservative in a sense that they're very traditional since 1920s, right? But then, let's just say being conservative does not really make a lot of change. It's very progressing. It's very slow. It's very steady. But then, as an ISSBA last year, I was a very, more of a radical kind of guy. I would more propose for a faster and quicker change that would actually balance between the two, the conservative admin and the student body. And that is why I believe I contributed heavily on the idea of giving change.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of our planned section. So members of the audience may now ask any questions they may have. Once a question is asked, I'll pick on two candidates who raise their hands ready with an answer. Questions can also be asked to specific individuals. Mr. Woods?
I was going to give you $20,000 to spend on student welfare. What would you buy? What would you do?
I think a budget as large as that could do a lot for well-being. So a plan that I could have was, instead of having students hang out in the libraries during study hall or whatever, if they want a space that's safe for them to just relax in and act as sort of like a library with less regulations, I think that would be a great thing to add. Like the counseling office now acts as a place for students to sort of eat lunch, and that's caused lots of controversy because a table got broken or things like that. But if there was a space where students could go to just be students and just sit down without having to eat lunch or like act as a cafeteria, I think that would be a great way to spend $20,000. Yeah. one of the place where they can just like
That'd be
go.
so good.
Change.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
Nah, it's okay. Go ahead.
Do we necessarily have to buy something?
I said you can do something.
Okay.
Buy something or create something.
Well, the thing is, like, I'd want to know what they'd want too, right? So I think the best way to do that would be like, it's hard, but I would want to try to split up the money to give to every, like, you know, all the honor societies and the committee so that they can do what they want with the money, and they could add it, because I know that many people have like an account per, like for dance we have like an account that we take from, and because it's more of like they should know like what can we support for them. So if they need money for something, like they should be able to ask, and like we can give that to them, and then, you know, they'll be able to do what they want with it, because it's more about what do they want.
If I had $20,000, I would actually create a sleeping dorm. Like, I know, like, IB puts many of us in a situation where we can't sleep 8 hours a day. So, I mean, like, why can't we, like, spend some money on, like, sleeping dorms and create, like, a really relaxing environment where people can just sleep without, like, I don't know, trying to, like, hide away from the admin or, like, away from the librarian so they don't catch me sleeping, right? I think we need that zone. Yeah, like, yeah, napping pod, yeah.
A couple universities.
Yeah, we should have that too.
Okay, any other questions? Reina?
Yeah, so I got a question for the council, and what I want to ask you is, Doyle mentioned how progressing that change to the administration because of their conservative manners, I'm not quite sure how true that is, though, takes a bit of time. So, in your newfound position, how would you push that change to make it quicker, make the process more efficient? As I'm sure the ISSBA Council has a lot of grand ideas, except it's the time that it takes to
sorry. I think the best way to tackle change is to show evidence that there needs to be change, you know? I kind of helped in bringing up the idea about a peer counseling program next year, which is now coming into action, which is great. And the way that I went for it was I spoke to the admin and I just said this is what I'm seeing. Tell me if you're seeing the same thing. I think we need to do something to change it. And then, now it's great. Next year we have the peer counseling program coming in. I'm sad I can't take it, but it's I'm happy that there's now going to be an outlet for students to talk to other students, because sometimes you can't talk to your counselor. It's a different culture when they're an adult and you're a child. What do you how are they going to know what low-key means? I don't know. How are they going to understand what you're trying to say if it's a different language, kind of thing?
I think a way to really make change much faster is really to prepare much more ahead of time before the meetings, to make sure that once you go in, your plans are nearly flawless because you have reached out to the student body. For example, you made a committee so that people can brainstorm the ideas, but also point out flaws so that you can answer the admin's questions when they pose, for example, they wouldn't think something is feasible, I guess. And the other thing was also to provide a lot of evidence that this change is something that the student body would really want. So I was thinking we would need maybe surveys or a lot of video evidence and things like that that really proves that this is something that we need. Yeah, thank you.
Do we not have time, or can I go for it? Okay, so last year, I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about this, but we actually proposed a Bob score proposal, right? But then the fact was the meeting kind of went sideways and actually never achieved what we desired because, there are too many ideas that are going on. We needed to take decisive action, but we can't take decisive action when there are, 12 choices. So I think what I would do is when I become an ISSBA VP or president, I would probably create a board of similar to the brain trust that Roosevelt had during a New Deal policy. I would have those advisors from each of the representative, from freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, that will represent their opinions and actually make quick decisive action regarding that.
Thank you to everyone who has attended this year's presidential debate. A special thank you to our candidates for answering questions which weren't necessarily the easiest.